Welcome back from the commercial break. We are moving on well with our discussion analyzing economic policies, and we are very much concerned about the science and technology that Ugandans need for socio-economic welfare. If I was now to quantify, especially looking at where we are, there is building the human capital development, and you are aware that our education, through education, is one way to improve the social capital of Ugandans. But having a populacy or a population 45 million and those who of adult age, and considering the youth, you find that we are having 79% of unemployed youth. So, Honorable, while we are discussing, once again, I will come in this second session, Honorable Oguzu Denesili, my friend, the MP Maracha County, we look at science and technology in a wider lens or broad lens as a solution to unemployment. We do hope that if we had invested highly in science and technology, you will be able to give me your analytical opinion. Maybe we would not be now exporting labor, the cheap labor, which is almost slave labor, for the flooding in, of most of our youth, over 3,000 almost every month, going abroad to look for job employment opportunities which are oppressive and exploitative. And again, another hope could be, you mentioned about the famine that has struck northern Uganda, especially we are referring to Karamoja, and so far tens of people who've already died, or hundreds, may have reached hundreds. Yes, the science and technology would have been applicable also in the agriculture sector. We're also concerned about the nature of our education and also industry. Whether science and technology is a working industry. So we'd like to maybe first have your submission on that and the inspiration that we desire. The policymakers, you are part of the policymaker, but the implementers, of course, who generate the process of coming up with the budget, and recalling that you were part of the committee that was handling issues of science and technology. And we would like maybe the viewers will be able to know what has the government prioritized amid this when there seems to be gaps, and maybe there are hopes that we may be able to share in accordance with the existing plan. It's a pleasure once again to have you.
Yeah, Joseph, your observations are really fantastic. As I alluded to earlier, science and technology can be able to solve our country's fundamental problems. But I did say science and technology has its side effect. You will actually find that some scientific innovations like robotics can actually result into unemployment as machines begin to replace people. When you go into the artificial intelligence industry, you will find computers and machines are going to do a lot of the things human beings used to do with a lot of efficiency, with lots of operational efficiency, and they will bring costs down, and all these companies or governments will deploy them to solve problems. But if we want to be able to deal with problems of unemployment, of course science and technology can also be able to do it, and we will need to skill people in those areas.
Yes.
That can help them create jobs. That's why I emphasize technical education, which we should have funded highly. But you find some of these skills programs are just initiatives of the president, and they are politically sometimes deployed within the cities where the population is expected to rise up, living rural areas unattended to. Right now in Uganda, there's what we call digital gap. There are people who do not have actual access to ICTs, and there are those who have. So the gap between these people will continue to grow in every aspect of life, that if government does not intervene and bridge the gap, you will find like a divide, a country divided along those lines. So for us as a country, I think the policymakers comprise of course the MPs, the executive, the national planners should be able to map Uganda and identify what kind of scientific innovation or technology would be most suited for our challenges. I just mentioned agriculture. Is there where we can benefit from agriculture? Our country is not electrified. About 20% of our population has access to electricity. So how can we be able to deploy renewable energy across the country? We are depending on charcoal, biomass for cooking. How can we be able to deploy technology or science to address some of these problems, so that the impact on our environment is yes, things like biogas, maybe renewable energy, and these are all scientific innovations and technologies that can be able to solve the problem. I talked of farming. If our productivity is low, how can we use science and technology to address these problems? We have unemployed youth. How can we give these youth skills to become programmers that they are now? You know, there's now remote work environment. People can actually work from home. How can we be able to skill these youth so that they're able to maybe do work for foreigners? You know, they can do programming, they can do sales support, they can without necessarily having people move to those areas. We have very few doctor-patient ratio in this country. So how can we be able to deploy e-medical telemedicine to enable one doctor serve, you know, a wider population? These are things other countries are doing. These are things already been done elsewhere, and we can replicate those tested models. We can also, as I said, partner. We can get copyrights for such intellectual, you know, knowledge, and be able to replicate them here. Already with the vaccines, I see a number of African countries are trying to get access to those vaccine, you know, technologies, so that they can be able to produce them cheaply here. And I'm told those are things countries like China do. Once they see something nice, they go to the inventor and begin to replicate that kind of thing in their own country. In a way, they will be creating jobs and ensuring availability of whatever goods and services as a result of such scientific innovation. But I should note that we will need to move in an organized way, unlike what is happening right now, where the country is moving in such a way that the role played by other people, the artists, is being dismissed. I think that's not how science and technology should be promoted. We must know that the other artists, they are equally important. We need people who are going to deal with issues of law, people who are going to deal with issues of the economics, because there's also the economics of science. Does it add up? Does the cost benefit exist? I'm sure we need to understand our history. That is very, very important.
Go on.
As we advance the scientific argument.
Yes, please.
We should know that it has to coexist with the other disciplines.
Yes.
Such that we have a very balanced society and a society where there's no conflict. We should be able to complement each other in what we do. If there are going to be negative effects of science, I'm sure those will be referred to maybe the legal people for adjudication. And that's why the country needs to plan. And that planning can start right from the bottom, in primary schools, in secondary schools, and it must advance. And government should be able to create platforms through which they can study what is going on, they can get feedback on what innovations are taking place. And of course, as I said, most importantly is the funding. How innovative your people are if they do not have access to funding to be able to do research. In these areas, still there will be little value from whatever science is being practiced. Already there's a lot of theoretical science, and most science are not also delivering because they do not have the tools to be able to do their work. And all those must holistically be looked at if we are to get benefits from the discipline of science and technology.
Thank you so much. We are still continuing together. There are some analytical observations I will continue to make, and which maybe their likelihood, especially through the policy formulation process, looking at the country's development plan and the legislative processes that we know usually go through, especially at a parliamentary level. And while appreciating what you've submitted, the content you've submitted, we seem to be slow in this. Maybe at a certain point, since you are my member of parliament. You're not a member of parliament for Malacha. You're a member of parliament for all of us, even me here.
That's right.
And when I get you the opportunity on behalf of the viewers, I will just straight away say, please, would you talk on our behalf? This is what we feel is lacking. Yes, me from the policy analytical point of view, and as an advocate for real development the services I've been giving elsewhere concerning policy development, you are aware, and we look at small space for science and technology to develop or to utilize our natural resources. Our natural resources we are meaning land. Our natural resources we are also meaning the mineral development, and our minerals. And then as we talk about land, then we also look at the agricultural products, because by use of land we do cultivate, and in your area you'll be able to alert us or to remind us what you grow most, maybe millet, and elsewhere maybe Irish potatoes, and elsewhere maybe banana. And at the end of the day, the requirement would be what could make a difference for us to move is an attachment of a technological and innovative approach over each. Natural resources, because the reason, dear viewers, why we come emphatically looking at science and technology tonight is one of the ways, if we're to measure our level of progressive development that ushers us into middle income status, it must look at the central gist of this matter, science, whether it is manifesting and visible, especially in those areas. We've talked about land, how we utilize the end product of our agriculture. Before I go to industrialization, natural resources, and then this the global village, which is dealing now with communication, where we are still putting on mobile money. We don't have I mean mobile telephones, right? We don't have free access to internet, and it is big. Most of our youth are struggling to even put. You must first put this man, then they deduct this tax, and we ask ourselves, to the policymakers, of which you are privileged to be with you, but you do represent many more others, what should be the passionate appeal into this, and maybe the likely intervention?
Yeah, indeed, this country is blessed with lots of resources. One, that we should be able to tap into for our own progress. Two, we should be able to preserve these resources for the future generation. And I agree with you that technology and science can be able to help with this. You mentioned the ICTs and in particular internet as a driver of socio-economic development, which is true. As I mentioned earlier, how we regulate science and technology can actually have impact on its adoption. For example, when we levied some tax, some OTT tax.
OTT. Citizens were complaining.
Yeah, they complained because it resulted into reduction.
Yes.
In the number of people who would use the internet. And the internet is the sea of knowledge. There's more you can do. You can use it for learning. You can use it for different purposes. So that means regulation. How we come up with policies has impact on its adoption. Right now, we know the president has banned platforms like Facebook.
Okay.
And these have tools for communication that people can integrate into different other platforms. They have what we call application programming interface that other people can plug into. So if there are such limitations, it means the benefits accruing from such technological innovations will not come to the people. Already URA is moving to tax some of these multinational companies, the Twitters, the Googles and the Facebooks. Of course, digital tax is very, very important. And now if some of the platforms are banned, it means the government will not be able to realize more income from those platforms for domestic use or to deliver services. So one really needs to look broadly at this, and in many countries actually they can appoint a kind of scientific panel to advise the leaders on what scientific innovation or technology could be relevant for the economy, for the country. That way we're able to think and look through what works and what doesn't work. Ideally, the natural resources of our country should have value to our country. And you can use technologies to add value to these resources. I'm sure the president has been emphasizing that a lot of us lose money to the foreign countries because we export unprocessed agricultural produce, and that means fetching less money. So how then can we be able to add value to these resources? The solution lies in deploying science and technology. For long in our communities, people have been processing cassava through rudimentary ways, and yet there are now innovations that help you get high quality cassava flour in a day without having to spend 3 to 4 days to get cassava flour. In Ghana, there's what we call one factory, one district policy.
One factory, one district.
One district, one factory.
It's difficult to
so what government does is to identify the potentials of such an area. If it's a cassava producing area, they will deploy cassava processing technology in that
That's
area.
What Ghana is doing.
One for the people there to learn. You might find business people can then pick that up. If it's a coffee processing area, then they would deploy a coffee processing plant.
That's right.
If it's an area that is rich in, you know, in marbles and building materials like Karamoja, you'd find construction or block laying technologies are deployed in that area. So you find the relevant technologies is deployed where the resources can be tapped and optimized for the country's progress, and largely that is not happening in our country. I'm told there is a lot of innovation in sitting in the agricultural research institutions, but this is not getting to the ordinary people. So we must be able to unpack this science and make it work for the country. It should not just be a big scientific name out there and not be able to address the problems of the ordinary people. That's really what I would want the planners, us, the policymakers, us who legislate for the country to focus on. And surprisingly, maybe in many situations, these do not get to forefront of issues. That's why we do not allocate resources to such innovations. We are now going to implement the Paris Development Model. And this involves collecting data at Paris level using gadgets. But you find in some areas, as we said, there's no access to internet. So how will the program work if the basic infrastructure is not in place? We need things like power. We need people to get access to these tools. The cost of all this technology must come down. So what other countries do is to subsidize, these technologies, such that access to them is made affordable.
Yes, thank you. We are going for commercial break, and it is good to be with you. The way you are articulating issues, I believe it informs our viewers outside there that indeed the Honourable Member of Parliament of Malacha, Honourable Dennis Oguzli, with that passionate sharing, I was just thinking and looking at saying, at times we go into this politics of opposition versus ruling, but your articulation beyond measure, it is beyond being even a member of parliament or either a technocrat. You are really indeed at a level where it could feed into what is required to be done for the good of the country. Dear viewers, stay tuned on Smart 24 TV. We will be looking at what you've talked about, the relevancy of science and technology, especially even in this Paris development model, and also the relevancy of the governance question in budgetary allocation, because we are looking at much more public sector, the public expenditure being higher, and also the cost of maintaining our security, even when we don't have war, still to be in the recently approved budget to be higher. And compared to this, science technology, which could be a trigger to the economic growth of the country, seem to be wanting. We will be comparing to maybe dig deep into that. Why does such a situation happen for our country? So that we are not lamenting, but we are looking at how we can get the best solution for our country. Thank you. Stay tuned as we go for the commercial break.